Okay, so as I had to do a second version of our Whoop, of our micro drone, our Scout, I also have to do a second version of our Cobra because of the same reason. Our components, our flight controller stack has changed a little bit. And so it's easier for me just to do a new build video. Not to mention, I'm actually getting an order ready for Venus ISD, and one of these is going to go to them. So, D, if hopefully you'll watch this, and I will try to keep it as short as possible. So, first, when you get your Scout, you should have 6 packets. One labeled, steel black nylock nuts and steel silver nuts. You're going to have one that is labeled 6mm bolts. There should be 17. You'll have another one that is 4mm nylon standoffs and nylon nuts. You may or may not use this one, so keep that in mind. I've got the standoffs. There's 9 of them. This says 30mm, but I'm actually going to be sending you 35s. These are a little bit taller, and while I'm doing the video, I'm going to make sure that these are what we want. So it might even be a little bit taller. We'll see. Then we have our 12mm bolts. Should be 9 of those. And then last but not least, you have an accessory bag which has zip ties, heat shrink, 3D printed parts, battery straps, Velcro, adhesive pads, voltage tester, and a little bit of glue. So that's all the hardware items that you will need. You will have the frame. We have a camera. We have motors. Then we have our electronics components. We'll go ahead and take these out. This is the ESC, Electronic Speed Controller. So that is what this is. Then we have our flight controller. This is the brain of the drone. So that is going to be this guy, like that. This antenna will you'll want to swivel it around to the back like that. Okay, next we have our LED and GPS board. That is the newest item on our stack. And then we have our GPS. Now, some of these items you will not use. For example, this GPS, you're not going to use this heat shrink, and you're not going to use the cabling that came with it. If I can get it out of the bag. You're not going to use either one of these, but you might want to hang on to them just in case. So I will leave that. Then you're going to have 2 little baggies with some other items that you won't need, or you will and you won't need. You won't need the capacitors. You won't need this cable harness here, but you will want these metal standoffs. Same for this one. There is one cable harness in here you will use. The rest of this stuff you probably won't, but I'm giving you for the event that you may someday want to utilize them. Because, for example, like this cable harness makes it so that you could use this ESC with a different flight controller. This cable harness makes it so that you can build your own and repin them. So I don't know if you'll ever get there, but I don't want to eliminate it from you from the get-go. So I am going to include these with them. And then also the LED packet. These have LEDs. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into this. And I will start getting the frame together here. So it's not super complicated. We have our arms. Try to not get my tablecloth dirty, but I know I will. We have a top plate, a bottom plate, although this is bottom plate, and then this is a battery protector. So there's your frame. So first thing I'm going to start with are the 12mm bolts. Now, I have tried to have an extra of everything, because if you ever drop something or something is not right or whatever, I really don't want you to wind up being one screw short. So I have included an extra in everything, so you will have parts left over. Alright, so I'm going to move some of this stuff out of the way so that I can get this going. So I'm using my 12mm bolts, and I'm doing it in the outermost holes of this plate. Okay, and I'm just gonna flip it over just like that. Okay, then I'm gonna start doing my arms. Happy. Okay, so here you have on the 12mm bolts. Then I'm going to bring this plate and just drop them right over on top like that. And there you go. Now you're going to need the steel black nylock nuts. You'll use the silver ones too in a minute, but not yet. We want the black ones. We're just going to start them on the threads. You don't have to crank it down. We won't tighten anything up really until we get to the end. I would like that out of the way there. Okay. And like I said, you should have an extra one. An extra nut left over. Okay, so now I have the 4 nuts in place on my 4 12mm bolts. Now I'm going to flip it over, and I'm just going to drop the other 12mm bolts through these holes here. It's like that. If you get one that is a little hard to get through, you can just thread it through. Okay, so now that I've got those through, I'm going to use the silver ones. Like that. Okay, so now you are free to go through and crank everything down nice and tight. So you're going to use your 2.5mm Allen and the what is this? This is a 5.5mm. It's your nut driver, the only nut driver you have. So we will do the inner Okay, so we've got one bolt left over, one and one. So those are in our leftover pile. And we have our frame put together and nice and solid. So next, what we want to do is we're actually going to take the contents out of the two little baggies that I told you about. So like I said, if you ever someday down the road disassemble this, who knows, you want to use the components for something else, you can. I mean, the ESC, the electronic speed controller, is a 55 amp ESC, so it could drive some pretty good motors. You would use this cable and it would go in here like that, and then you could take it to whatever flight controller you wanted to use if you were going to go with something different. In this particular case, for this build, you will not use that. It already has a capacitor, so you do not need to add any more capacitors. So what we do want out of that bag are these these four metal standoffs here, and we're just going to thread them right onto those 12 millimeter bolts, just like that. So once you get them on there, I like to use the needle nose just to give them a little snugger, just to give them a good final twist, because I'm trying to make sure that they're on there good and tight. Okay, so we got those four. Now we can actually start on some components. We want to open our other little baggie, because we're going to need the standoffs out of it. But then we also need another cable. So if you were going to add, let's see, this looks like this could be for another set of motors. So if you were going to build an octo, you'd have two of these, this cable, and that would make it possible for you to do 8 motors. This cable is if you were doing digital. You could do an HD0 or a DJI FPV system on your Cobra, and this cable would be able to plug into this spot where it says HD right there. But again, you're running analog, so you won't need these cables. This is the cable we're hunting for right here. You won't need these. You won't need that one. You won't need these pins. You will want the standoffs there. So we don't need any of that stuff. We need that one. So this is what you're getting out of that bag. Okay? So we're going to look at this. Always try to pay attention. Let's see if I can zoom to the pins and where they're at. The fastest and easiest way to disable your drone is to bend one of these pins. So please be careful when you're plugging things in to make sure that they are pinned properly. The other thing I'm going to point out are these items here. VBAT is your positive wire to your battery. Ground is your negative wire to your battery. 4321, those are your motors. CURR, that's a current sensor. And then the last one is telemetry. So when you plug this in, you want to make sure that's at the top, like that's at the top, and that our red wire is at that VBAT. And then we just plug it right in. Just like that. Okay, so now we can just put him right in place, right there, just like that. And then what you're going to do, you'll see not a lot of room, but some, but you're going to use the next set of standoffs and just screw them right on. It's a good thing that I'm making this video because I just realized I'm going to have to probably provide, or actually we'll see if these other ones will work. So see, this is something that I did not think of. Either way, so this is flight controller. Same thing, you need to pay attention to pins and holes on connectors. We are going to, let's see, it's this one. Yeah, it's this guy right here. His doesn't show as much information. I'll zoom in. All of these are going to be silk screened. So current sensor, R1 is going to be that telemetry. Then it shows motor 1 through 4, ground and bat. So when we plug this in, it's going to go like this. Just like that. So that way when you fold it over, your arrow on the flight controller is facing forward. And now we're almost there. We have our speed controller and our flight controller. Now what we need to do is that last one, the distribution board. So I did fib to you. I told you you would not need your nylon standoffs, but you are because of the third board, which we did not have in the past. These were spares in the past, so that's good that we included them. So this last one, the same thing, it's just going to thread right onto that one, like that. You can snug them up with this, but I like to do it with my fingers so that I can feel resistance, because I don't want to strip anything out. I don't want to hurt anything. All right, so those are the nylon standoffs. Now we're going to go for our distribution board. Same thing. So it actually shows you, oh, I've been on zoomed in. So it shows your GPS. So that's actually this cable. Here, I'm going to zoom back out. There, so this cable is going to go here, GPS, look at our pins, look at our connector. And then same thing, this connector, these pins, going like this. And then it just drops right on top like that. Okay. So that's going to be out the back. It's your antenna for your VTX. Lastly, we're just going to secure these down with the nylon nuts. Since we used the nylon standoffs, we'll use the nylon nuts. If my big fat fingers will cooperate. just go through, snug them up. Okay, so this is for your camera that you'll be adding. These are obviously for the motors. This is for the GPS. So now you can do a couple of things. We could go ahead and add our standoffs. Let's do that. Let's make this stuff left over. Put it over in our leftover pile. All right, now let's do some standoffs. Let's make sure they are in the right spot. So we've got our standoffs. Again, one extra. I think we're going to be good. You need your 6mm bolts. Actually, do I want to do it that way? Yeah, actually, I'm going to leave these front two off, and you'll see why when I do the camera. It'll be easier to do the camera with those off. Okay, so we could actually go ahead and tackle the camera. So let's do that. Here's your camera. Let's see. In your accessory bag, you're going to find a couple of printed items that we'll need. You'll need a battery strap here eventually. This is for your GPS. If you still have some strings hanging off, you can clip them off or tear them off, whatever. We do print these items in mass, so sometimes we don't always get around to trimming off the hairs. But you have that. And then we have two of these for the camera. So that's what we're going to do now. Won't need the cable. This is the 1.5mm Allen. And I'm just going to start it till I feel it on the other side. And then I'm going to come over here and do this. And I'm actually going to spin it so that it's towards the front, because what we want is have it set back like that. to protect it in the event of impact, crash, anything like that. Alright. Alright. So, see, now it's like this. Now it might be a little bit easier. And I got it there. I'm just going to use my fingernails on my thumb to push down. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Just start it. Use your fingernails. Push it down. And really we're just trying to make them even. I think he needs to go down a little bit more. That looks pretty close. We can always adjust. So now, again, same as always. Pins, connector, line them up. And then make sure you're in there good. There we go. Then I'm just going to, I'm going to have to use the 2.5 like that. There. And there. So you see, now your camera is in and it's protected from impact because it's recessed back into the body of the drone. So we're happy with that now with the GPS. I almost always forget to add this printed item and wind up having to take the top plate off. So try not to forget to add this part. And then there's obviously a lot of slack here that we're going to need to take up as well. So keep that in mind. So here's our little GPS holder here. What I'll do is I'll probably wrap it around this standoff a couple times. But I can figure that out once I make my connection. So I'm going to route it through here. There's an arrow. Let's zoom in. There's an arrow. And it needs to be facing the same direction as the drone. And it has all the information. Come on, there it is, right there. All the information when you go to plug it in. And I have my cable backwards, because if I, oh no, am I right? Yes, this is right. Okay, because the pins are on the bottom, pins are on the bottom. Like that. Yeah. And my red wire is at the 5 volts. So we're happy on that. Arrow forward. It is a press fit. So just pop it up in there. That looks pretty good to me. And it should stay there. Now, you have been supplied with some glue. And the reason we give you the glue is to run a bead of it along the edge of your GPS. We have found that in hard crashes, this GPS will come loose and fall off and get dislodged, whatever. So one of the last steps, because we don't want to do it now because you'll wind up getting glue all over yourself. One of the last steps is to do a bead of glue around the exterior of the GPS so that you don't lose it. But we're not going to do it just yet. Okay, so like I said, I have some slack I want to try and deal with. So I'm just going to wrap it around the standoff, just like that. And that will help you get rid of some of that slack. Okay, so one left over, some small ones left over from the camera. So now we are pretty much ready to do our top plate. So I'm going to go ahead and get that into place. We don't have to tighten anything down just yet. This is really just to keep everything together. Make sure we didn't crimp any wires, squish any wires when we added our plate. So we're in good shape there. Everything else looks good. I'm not going to worry about these yet because I still need to add motors. Then we'll make everything nice and tidy. And like I said, I'm just kind of snugging things. I'm not cranking anything down yet. That again is another one of those last steps. So that if you ever have to take anything off, it's easier. Okay, so body is pretty much done. I'm going to pause this and add the motors, and then we'll pick back up where we left off. Okay, I added one motor and I wanted to make a comment. First off, when you open your motors, there's going to be 2 sets of screws. One set is longer than the other set. You are going to be using the longer of the 2, so make sure you pay attention to the length of your screws. You want the 4 longer ones. The other thing I'm going to call out is the motors. The only reason these are colored different is to show grouping. These 4 go to that one, these 3 go to that one, these 3 will go to that one, that motor, these 3 will go to this motor, and that 3 will go to that motor. So we did have one teacher call in asking if the colors meant something, so it only signifies grouping. So that's that. Okay, so I've added all my motors, connected up all my wires. Now I'm actually not going to do too much more at this stage because when you do motor rotation, you may potentially need to change your the wires. You know, if it's spinning this way and I want to change rotation, then I can actually just swap these 2 wires, and that any 2 wires. If I swap any 2 of these wires, it will change the rotation of the motor. So that's why we actually went with the bullet connectors that we have. So, like I said, I'm going to leave it hanging loose for right now. I will probably do these, and then the other thing I'm going to do is the battery protector. So let's go ahead and get that part out of the way. I usually wait to the end to do this part because it kind of gets in my way during assembly. But either way, so I want it to go down and come back this way. So I'm just going to, might need your tweezers that are in your toolkit. And pull it like that, and then I'm just going to pass it through here like that, and then Go there. Again, you'll probably have to use your tweezers to get it to come the rest of the way. And there you go. So now, the last step. So we found with a bottom mounted battery that people were landing and trashing their battery, messing up their battery. So we made this little plate and you just kind of through there and there like that. Like that. So your battery will go in there. Okay, we've got this. So yeah, like I said, at this point, actually we'll go ahead and do this. I like to, actually, you know what? Let's see, how do we want to route it? Because this is a little bit of an adjustment for me because the third board, this third board is the new addition, and so I want to make sure we are in good shape. So what we'll do is I'll send one up here. When you're doing your antennas, that's a little bit far though. I'll come back to that because you want it in a V or a 45 degree angle. So however we mount it, I used to do it kind of like that, but with this third layer, I might have to improvise. Maybe have one coming straight up and one coming out like this. But let's get it on the computer, do that part of it, and then I'll do a tidy up stage. So I'll be back. Okay, so now we're ready to do the remaining tidy up stages. I'm actually going to go ahead and do LEDs at the same time. Some of the other things we're going to need to do is get the adhesive pads ready. So we'll get those out. These are Velcro strips. These are going to be for your batteries. We have a spare in case you break one. We'll be using the zip ties, heat shrink, glue, voltage tester you'll need also with your batteries, adhesive pad. We're going to cut this into 4 sections. There's scissors in your toolkit, but you might want to get some heavier duty scissors. Let's see. We'll cut long ways. Doesn't have to be super thick. We just need 4 strips for our LEDs. Okay, then might be too long, so I'm just going to trim a little. Just like that. So I'll trim a little on this guy. Tweezers apparently. So, as I'm doing this, I route my wires, my motor wires, underneath my arms. I put the LEDs on the top. And I look at the LEDs as cool and pretty and, you know, somewhat useful, but I also look at them as expendable. And here's what I'm getting at. When you fly, when you race, you crash, your propellers tend to bend. And when they bend, if you keep spinning the propellers, whatever is on top of the arm winds up getting torn up pretty good. So, a couple notes from that. Remind your kids and your students to disarm anytime that they find themselves in trouble. But then also, like I said, LEDs are a lot easier to replace than repairing motor wires. So we have found that it's easier to run them underneath. As always, check your connectors and pins before you do any damage to anything. Okay, spares, extras. Alright. So, let's do a zoom. So here is where you are plugging in your LEDs. Doesn't matter what, you know, which one goes where, but that's where you're plugging them in, right there. So, check our pins and our connector. Holes are at the top, pins are at the top. If you have big fingers like me, you can get it there close and then use your tweezers to push it the rest of the way in. The thing you don't want to do is damage anything, break anything. We don't want to break anything. So we get it in place. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to pull the adhesive off of this. Put my LED right there. Just like that. Okay. Now I'm going to do the rest of them. So I'm going to pause. Okay. So now, you see, we have our LEDs plugged in. And they're on the adhesive pads on the arms. So now we'll tie everything down. Okay, so here is assembly completed. Receiver wires, I did manage to route. Let's do a zoom. I was able to route my receiver wires through to the top so that I could get my get that the way I wanted. I actually routed the wiring for my LEDs. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I routed them inside and around the standoffs, because basically, I mean, anything that you can secure. Here, this popped out again. Anything that you can secure so that it doesn't get loose and into propellers is what you want to do. So I've got my wires zip tied with my LED and my double-sided adhesive pad. I've got all my wiring routed inside the body. Everything is pretty much ready to go. You will have done some configuring. Again, I mentioned that you don't want to do this step until after you've done your motor rotation. A note about the motors. Right is usually tight and left is usually loose, but we have the opposite. Ours left is tight, right is loose. And that's just basically an ordering error from a long time ago. So, oh, and lastly, like I said, on here, you'll have a piece of Velcro. So here you have your Velcro. There is a fuzzy side and a hook side. So just put one on the battery, one here. Cut it to fit. It doesn't have to be this long, or it can be, doesn't matter. But that's going to be how that goes. So if you have any questions, let me know. Email me. Oh, and like I said, since this is going to Venus, I'm going to go ahead and do the glue so that I can set this aside and let it dry. So like I said, just right along the edge, make sure it's nice and in there. And then I'm just going to do it on the two sides. I'm not doing it on the back because if I ever need to disconnect the connector, maybe you can do the corner if you want to, but I would not do the actual connector because, like I said, if you ever have to get it out. And there you go. Put the cap back on, and you have an assembled Cobra. Again, if you have any questions or comments, please reach out to me at j@onpoynt.com. And next you should be looking at the motor rotation. This is an iNav flight system, so you'll have to do a compass calibration. You'll have to do an accelerometer calibration. And you'll have to check your motor rotation before you can add propellers. And then you have to go outside to actually do your test to arm your quad. It will not arm unless it has at least a minimum of 6 GPS. So trying to do something inside is only going to be able to be done through the computer. But we have videos on all that. Sorry this was so long. And again, like I said, if you have comments, questions, concerns. Oh, one more thing. As you can see, we do our best to get all the carbon fiber and dust and everything off of these things. As you can see from my desk surface here, there's still a little bit left over. So just for cleanliness, make sure you wash your hands after you do your build. And with that, I'll say goodbye.